excelsis Deo. Merry Christmas, everybody. Welcome to Rocky. I'm so glad that you're here. We're going to sing together, so let's lift our voice. Oh, come, all ye faithful, joyful and triumphant. Oh, come ye to Bethlehem. Come and behold him, born the King of ages. Oh, come, let us adore. Oh, come, let us adore him. Oh, come, let us adore him, Christ the Lord. Christ the Lord. Oh, sing, choirs of angels, sing in exaltation. Oh, sing, all you citizens of heaven above. Glory to God, all glory in the highest. Oh, come, let us adore him. Oh, come, let us adore him. Oh, come, let us adore him, Christ the Lord. In excelsis Deo. In excelsis Deo. Sing, angels we have heard. Angels we have heard on high, sweetly singing o'er the plains and the mountains in reply, echoing their joyous strains. Shepherds, why this jubilee? Why your joyous strains prolong? What the gladsome tidings be, which inspire your heavenly song? In excelsis Deo. In excelsis Deo. Come to Bethlehem and see him whose birth the angels sing. Come adore on bended knee Christ the Lord, the newborn King. Gloria in excelsis Deo. Gloria Well, again, Merry Christmas. We're so glad that you guys are here. Turn to somebody next to you and ask them if they prefer white lights or colored lights. Well, I hope you settled that. I know it can be a pretty, big debate there. I hope you figured it out. I know with our staff, there's a lot of debate about that. And apparently even some families fighting. So hopefully no fights broke out. But hey, we're so glad that you're here. We're going to keep singing, and we just want to have a warm, living room vibe. We're going to sing some Christmas carols. We'd love for you guys to sing along with us. Let's sing together.
One, two, three.
The herald angels sing, glory to the newborn King. Peace on earth and mercy mild, God and sinners reconciled. Joyful all ye nations rise, join the triumph of the skies. With angelic hosts proclaim, Christ is born in Bethlehem. Hark the herald angels sing, glory to the newborn King. Glory to the King. Glory to the newborn. By highest heaven adored, Christ the everlasting Lord. Late in time, behold Him come, offspring of a virgin's womb. Veiled in flesh, the Godhead seen, hail incarnate deity. Please this man with men to dwell. Jesus our Emmanuel. Hark the herald angels sing, glory to the newborn King. Glory to the King. Glory to the newborn King. Glory to the King. Glory to the newborn. Hail the heaven-born Prince of Peace. Hail the Son of Righteousness. Light and life to all He brings. Risen with healing in His wings. Proud He lays His glory by, born that man no more may die. Born to raise the sons of earth, born to give them second birth. Hark the herald angels sing, glory to the newborn King. Hark the herald
Let earth receive her King. Let every heart prepare him room. And heaven and nature sing. And heaven and nature sing. Joy to the world, the Savior reigns. Let men their songs employ, while fields and floods, rocks, hills, and plains repeat the sounding joy. Repeat the sounding joy. Truth and grace, and makes the nations prove the glories of his righteousness and wonders of his love, and wonders of his love. Oh, 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 oh. Joyful we adore thee, God of glory, Lord of love. Hearts unfold like flowers before thee, opening to the sun above. All your works with joy surround you, earth and heaven reflect your rays. Stars and angels sing around you, center of unbroken praise. Joyful, joyful, we adore thee, God of glory, Lord of love. Hearts unfold like clouds before thee, opening to the world, the Lord is come. Let earth receive her King. Let every heart prepare him room. And heaven and nature sing. And heaven and nature sing. And heaven and nature sing.
Oh, law is love, and his gospel is peace. And chains shall he break, for the slave is our brother, and in his name all oppression shall cease. Sweet hymns of joy in grateful chorus praise we let all within us praise his holy name. And Christ is the Lord. Oh, praise his name forever. His power and glory evermore proclaim. His power and glory evermore proclaim.
Awesome. Good singing with you. Go ahead and grab a seat. Welcome to Rocky. Welcome to this Christmas Eve service. My name is Matt, and I'm one of the pastors here on staff. So good to be with you. We know on Christmas Eve we got a lot of guests and visitors who aren't usually with us on a Sunday morning, and I just want you to hear from me, man. We're just excited that you would choose to spend an hour of your Christmas Eve hanging out with us. There's plenty of other things that you could be doing, but you're here. Now, I don't know if you want to be here, but you're here, okay? And we're just excited about that, to celebrate Christmas with you this season. Here's the deal. There's people in our community that ask me sometimes, hey, what's Rocky, all about? And I'll tell them, hey, our mission here at Rocky, the phrase that keeps us moving forward is actually out in our lobby. It's to know Jesus and love like him. That's what we're all about. Meaning, this church is a group of people that are like-minded about Jesus. We believe in Jesus. And because of that, then we want to do our very best to love people in our community and literally all over the world. But that's what we're trying to do. In fact, we want to be the kind of church that if there was ever a day, and we hope this doesn't happen, but if there was ever a day where this church had to shut its doors and close down, we want to be the kind of church that our community would actually be bummed out, because we're a church that's invested in loving people in our community, in our schools, in our businesses. That's the kind of church that we're trying to be. So here's the deal. You just got to know, next 2 Sundays, our services are online. It's all online. We're giving our staff some time off during this Christmas season. But then we get into the new year. You just got to know you're invited back. And we hope you come back. We're going to be starting a new teaching series on the topic of grit. It's going to be so good. And just come back. You should come back. If you enjoy this service, or if this service encourages you at all, you just need to know you're always welcome. You're always welcome, okay? And so if I ever, run into you and you're like, I didn't know I could come back to church, I'm going to say, you're a liar, because I invited you, okay? So you're always just welcome to come back, and we hope you do. And also at the end of this service, we'll take up our Christmas Eve offering. We do this every year, and so we'll have buckets at the door on the way out. And if you're a partner here, we hope you jump in. If you're, just visiting, hanging out with us, don't feel like you got to put anything in there. But if you do, you just got to know all of the funds that are given are going to help us just continue to move the mission of our church forward and loving people really, really well. But you're here because Christmas, all right? There's just something about Christmas. It just draws us in. Even if you don't even believe in God, there's just something about Christmas. You just kind of get up for Christmas. And I don't know if you're like me, but the older I get, the more I get up for Christmas. So I'm just wondering, if you're in the room right now, okay, and you love Christmas, just make some noise right now. Go ahead and just make some noise. Wow, okay. All right, we got something in common then, all right? So let me just test you out a little bit. If you've got Christmas lights on your house right now, make some noise right now. You got Christmas lights on your house? Pretty good. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. If you've come to the conclusion that eggnog is the best drink during this season, go ahead and just make some noise right now. About half of you. Make some noise if you like your eggnog with something a little extra in it. Go ahead, just, yeah. Yeah, I'm talking about cinnamon. All right, relax, talking about cinnamon. Okay, make some noise if you've got all the Christmas shopping done. You're all set, ready to go for tomorrow. It's pretty good. Remember, you're in church, but go ahead, make some noise if you still got a gift or two to buy tonight. Yeah. Okay, good. I'm gonna keep it short for y'all, all right? So you can get out there and don't want to ruin Christmas for the kids. You know what I'm saying? Okay, here's the deal. This is why, this service is so good, because I love all those things about Christmas, and you do too. But sometimes we can get so focused on all those things, we can, if we're not careful, we can miss out on the most important thing. So this is crazy. Think about this. The reason why you're in this room, this Christmas, is because something happened 2,000 years ago at the first Christmas, that a baby was born. And for some reason, think about it, the world just can't forget the story. Here we are 2,000 years later, and you're here whether you want to be here or not, but you're here. And the reason why this service exists is because of the story about about God who would send his son down to this earth to be with us. It's the most important part of Christmas. And so here's what we want to do, okay? We want to take the next 30 minutes or so, and I'm going to get up here and talk in a couple of minutes, but the band also has a song that they want to sing to you. And here's the thing. I just want you to do your very best. Because there's a lot going on, and you got stuff going on this evening too and this week. But here's the deal. I would hate for you to go through this Christmas season and miss out. To be reminded, to be refreshed, or maybe for the very first time, to hear why we think, especially as a church, that Christmas is such a big deal. So the band's got a song. I want you to sit back. I want you to relax. I want you to lean in to these lyrics, hopefully be encouraged by it. And then I'll get up here afterwards, and we'll talk about the Christmas story a little bit. Enjoy this next song.
Behold, what light has come in the dark and not contain it. The Savior of the world is finally here. Oh, come, let us adore Him. Come, let us adore Him. For He alone is worthy, Christ the
Behold the Father's love, beyond all comprehension. He gave His only Son to die in our place. Go and see that empty tomb. He's not there, for He is risen. Every heart preparing room. Jesus Christ, the King of heaven. Oh, come, let us adore Him. Come, let us adore Him. For He alone is worthy, Christ the Lord.
We give you all the glory. We give you all the glory. We give you all the glory. Christ the Lord. We give you all the glory. We give you all the glory. We give you all the glory. Christ the Lord. We praise your name forever. We praise your name forever. We praise your name forever. Christ the Lord. Oh, come, let us adore him. Come, let us adore him. For he alone is worthy. Christ the Lord. Oh, come, let us adore him. Come, let us adore him. For he alone is worthy. Christ the Lord. He is Christ the Lord. He is Christ the
They do a good job. Again, hey, Merry Christmas. And here's what I want to do on this Christmas Eve. I want to do something a little bit different. This is usually, when the pastor gets up and he preaches, the Christmas message. But instead of, kind of preaching tonight, I just want to have a conversation. Because here's the deal. I've grown up in church. I've been in church my whole life. I'm a pastor. I work at a church now. And I know that many of you have heard the Christmas story before. You know some of the details. Most of you, there's probably a few in here, maybe you've never heard it before. But most of us, we kind of understand that the reason why we're here is because, there was something that happened a couple thousand years ago. It has to do with this baby who was born. And so I just want to have a conversation today. Just change it up a little bit. And I want to talk about something that I've been thinking about. And this is just kind of a rule of thumb for me, that when I'm thinking about something, or I feel like that I'm being challenged by something, I find that it's helpful maybe when I share that with other people, because other people are just like me, okay? And they go, oh yeah, that's helpful. And I'm glad we're talking about that. And so I was reading the Christmas story again, getting ready for this, Christmas Eve service, and something stood out to me that it just hasn't stood out to me before. And this is, and if you're a follower of Jesus, or you've been in church for a long time, if you read, the scriptures, this can happen. I mean, you can read a verse, 100 times, and then you read it the 101st time, and there's just something that sticks out to you. It just, for whatever reason, it just resonates with you. And so this is what happened to me this Christmas. And so when we were getting ready for this, I said, I just want to talk about this one thing that I've been thinking about, because I never really thought about it before this Christmas. So let me show you the verse. This is Luke chapter 1. And Luke, he gives us the story of Christmas. He's one of the gospel writers. He's in the New Testament. And Luke gives us like the story before the story. Luke chapter 1 is like the setup for Christmas. So there's a baby that's coming, but there's some things that are happening before we get to the birth of Jesus. And this is the story in Luke chapter 1. So here's what it says. This is a conversation that's going to be happening. It's pretty incredible, between Mary, who's going to be the mother of Jesus, and then an angel named Gabriel. Look at the story. Luke chapter 1, verse 26. It says, in the 6th month of Elizabeth's pregnancy, this is a whole nother story. This is a backstory to the backstory, but essentially Elizabeth is related to Mary, and Elizabeth's having her own miracle. She's going to have a baby in her 80s, all right? So we're just going to kind of getting a little bit of the timetable here. So in the 6th month of Elizabeth's pregnancy, God sent the angel Gabriel to Nazareth, a town in Galilee, to a virgin pledged to be married to a man named Joseph, a descendant of David. And the virgin's name was Mary. And the angel went to her and said, greetings, you who are highly favored, the Lord is with you. Now again, I've read this hundreds of times, and for whatever reason, this Christmas season, verse 28 has just stood out to me. There's something in there that I know it's there, but I've never taught about it, I've never preached about it, I've never even really thought about it. And yet, for some reason, this Christmas, it got my attention. Go back to verse 28. Look what it says again. It says this, greetings, this is the angel to Mary. Of all the things the angel could say, angel shows up to Mary and says, greetings, you who are highly favored. And that phrase there, highly favored, it just got me thinking, like, man, of all the greetings you could do, that for some reason, when it comes to Mary, who's really a nobody from nowhere, I mean, Nazareth is a place, actually, Jesus is going to be born in Bethlehem. He's going to grow up in Nazareth. And when Jesus is kind of coming up in the game, he starts recruiting his disciples. There are people that will push back on Jesus going, there's no way that God's son would come from Nazareth. I mean, it's nothing. And yet for some reason, the angel shows up to this, nobody who's from nowhere, this teenage girl. She's 15 or 16 years old. And looks at Mary and says, hey, you got to know this. I'm about to tell you the plan, the setup for Christmas. But before we get to that, Mary, you just got to know, you are highly favored, meaning that in the eyes of God, you're special. You're one of his favorites. And not just favored, you're highly favored. Like there's the favorites and then the not, And you're on the favorites list, Mary. And so it just got me thinking. I just started thinking about that, and so I wrote down this question in my notes. I said a couple months ago, and I just wrote, does God have favorites? Does he? Does God have favorites? Because if he does, I hope I'm one of them. You know what I mean? If he has favorites, I hope I'm one of them. And to be honest, before this Christmas, I never even thought about it, but it kind of makes sense, right? If you believe in God and God created us in his image and in his likeness, you and I have favorites. And if you and I have favorites, then maybe God has favorites too. For example, let me tell you about some of my favorites, and you may resonate with these favorites, maybe not, because our favorites might be different. But if we were, hanging out this evening and on Christmas Eve, and you said, Matt, I'm just curious, what's your favorite chicken sandwich? I tell you straight up, this is a Chick-fil-A church. We're just in. It's Chick-fil-A. Now, here's the deal. Now, Popeyes, I see you, because that spicy chicken sandwich over there is good, okay? It's a close second, but I'm just telling you, my favorite, if you're asking what my favorite would be, I'll tell you, my favorite chicken sandwich, this Christmas is still Chick-fil-A. Or if you said, Matt, what's your favorite candy? And if you're part of our church, you know what it is. I talk about this. But my favorite candy is probably going to be different than yours, but my favorite is Butterfinger. It's my favorite. We have kids in this church at Halloween. This is a true story. It's happened the last 3 years. We have kids in our church that at Halloween, they tithe their candy, and after Halloween, they bring me all their Butterfingers. It's amazing. And I look at them and I say, your sins are forgiven. That's what I tell them. It's my favorite. May not be yours, but it's my favorite. Or, if you're like, Matt, what's your favorite pizza topping? And I get it, not a lot of people in this camp with me, but I'm a mushroom guy. You know what I mean? Any mushroom people in here? Yeah. Oh, more than I thought. Heck yeah. You know what I'm talking about. Everyone's always upset with you when you get the pizza you want. You know what I mean? It's my favorite, though. I don't even know why. I'm not even a big fan of vegetables, but for some reason, mushrooms, one of the more disgusting ones, I love. It's my favorite. I love it on pizza. Or, it's the Christmas season. If you're like, Matt, what's your favorite Christmas movie? Now, some of you, it's Die Hard. You know what I mean? There's been a huge discussion, is Die Hard Christmas movie or not? I'm going to tell you, I'm glad you came, because let me just tell you, it is, okay? It is a Christmas movie. And there was an article this week that said it's actually the number 2 most favorite Christmas movie in our nation, which is pretty cool. But it's not my favorite. My favorite is National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. That's my favorite, okay? My wife and I could tell you quotes that are inappropriate from that movie right now, but it's one of my favorites, all right? And my wife and I, every year, we have a Christmas tradition that on New Year's Eve, we watch that. We get some eggnog and we watch that, and we get Christmas ready for, all of our kids. And it's just one of my favorites. It may not be your favorite, but, it's one of my favorites. Or if you said to me, I'm a big sports guy, I love baseball and football and hockey and all that. But if you're like, Matt, who's your favorite quarterback? You know what I tell you? One of my favorite quarterbacks, and I get it, it's sensitive right now because we got some Bronco fans in here. I know you feeling it. But I would tell you, my favorite quarterback of all time is probably this guy, It's probably Peyton Manning. He's probably one of my favorites. Yeah. You miss him. I know you do. You miss him. He's just easy to root for. He's got a good personality. I like him, He's one of my favorite quarterbacks. And I'm sure you may have a different favorite quarterback. But this is the thing about favorites, right? We all have different favorites. And so again, just got me wondering, if you have favorites and I have favorites, wouldn't it make sense that God I think I heard Tebow's name mentioned right there. Wow. Hashtag Christmas miracle, that would be, wouldn't it? Wow. Yeah. Does God have favorites? I think he does. I think he does. And for whatever reason, Mary is one of his favorites. And here's the thing, if God does have favorites, and all of a sudden this is a really big discussion because you probably want to be on his favorites list. And so how you determine favor with God all of a sudden really matters. Like, how do you get it, right? And I've heard this discussion before with other pastors because I've heard preachers get up there and say, if you want the favor of God, you'll know when you have it because it's kind of like a wealth and health kind of deal. If you're wealthy, then you have God's favor. And if you're healthy, you have his favor. Which, if that's true, then most of us in this room probably are on his favorite list. Most of us in this room are pretty wealthy, especially in the context of the world's wealth. I mean, you probably all drove a car here, you know what I mean? In the context of the world's wealth, that's, when you go into like the slums of the world, one of the first questions people who live in slums will ask you, do you drive a car? And then I always like wow them. I'm like, I got a house from my cars. It's called a garage. They're like, what? Yeah. I'll be like, I have two cars. Wow. So you have a car. You're pretty wealthy. Most of you ate food today. You're looking pretty good. You have food. You're going to go home and eat more food tonight. I mean, you're probably not wondering like, man, I hope there's food today. You got food, meaning you're pretty wealthy. And as far as I can tell, most of you have clothes on, which is great. Good job. You got the basics down. You're pretty wealthy. I mean, the fact that you're sitting here it's pretty wealthy. And for what I can tell too, I mean, I don't hear too many people coughing. You're pretty healthy too, Good job. I mean, what does that mean? I mean, is that the filter for God's favor? You're healthy and you're wealthy. And what does that mean for all the people, in the world who aren't? I mean, there's 8 billion people in the world. The guy, right in the middle is making $5 a day. The bottom 15% of the world lives on less than $1 a day. So what does that mean? Just God doesn't like them? Or what about this? What about this? 1 year ago today, I got a phone call that I hated. It's Christmas Eve last year. It actually came at 2 a.m. on Christmas Eve. I missed it because I was sleeping. And at 4:30, I responded to the voicemail. But the voicemail was from one of my good friends. And he called me up on 2 a.m. on Christmas Eve, and here's how he started the conversation. He said, I don't know how to say this, Matt, but she's gone. In the middle of the night, leading into Christmas Eve, one of my good friend's wife just passed away. Early 40s. Left her husband and 3 kids. And I've met with this guy. I mean, he's my friend. I meet with him throughout the year. What would I tell him in this conversation? Hey, God has favorites, but your wife just wasn't on the list. She didn't make it. See, all of a sudden, this is a really big discussion. And because of the Christmas story, it just got me thinking. If God has favorites, then how do you get on the list? And apparently Mary, she was highly favored. And here's the cool thing. When you read the Christmas story and you begin thinking, man, what does it mean to be on God's favorite list? You quickly realize as you read this story that the people who you think should be on it maybe aren't. And according to the world, or at least the filters that we put on God's favor, maybe that's not actually what matters to God. Again, just look at it. This is, again, Luke chapter 1, 28. And the angel went to Mary and said, "Greetings, you who are highly favored, the Lord is with you." And Mary was greatly troubled at his words and wondered what kind of greeting this might be. Of all the things the angel could say, this is interesting. I'm highly favored. Verse 30, so the angel doubles down and says to Mary, "Do not be afraid, Mary, you have found," and again, favor with God. Whatever Mary was doing, or whatever she was thinking or believing or saying, it somehow got her on God's favorite list. Now here's the thing, when you get into all the other scriptures in the Bible, Old Testament, New Testament, Mary's not the only one who kind of gets tagged on the favorite list. There's other biblical characters that God shows up and says, "Hey, just so you know, you're my favorite, you're my favorite, you're my favorite." And when you do a study of all these characters, they really don't have a lot in common. In fact, they almost have nothing in common. I mean, different ethnicity, different backgrounds, different wealth status, different, parts of the world. And yet there's this one thing that will kind of keep showing up. You see this thing in the narrative of these stories where it kind of gets framed up that God is the Father, and then these characters, these biblical characters, are his kids. And God, he just kind of says, look, you're my favorite because you're my kid. In fact, you're highly favored. If you believe that I'm God, you're one of my kids. And so I highly favor you. I love you and I highly favor you. And the thing with favorites, especially in our culture, we kind of fall into this trap. It's kind of a lie, really, that we only believe you can only have one favorite, which means if there's a favorite, then we're wondering why we're not, right? Hey, what's your favorite? And you pick one thing. But that's not really true when it comes to favorites. You can have multiple favorites, even in the same genre or even in the same family. Because check this out. I've got 4 daughters at home. I got 4 girls, 4 beautiful girls. And if you asked me, Matt, which one is your favorite? You know what I would say? Depends on the day. For some of you parents, that's close to home, isn't it? I mean, you're like, yeah, it's kind of it. No, I wouldn't say that. Matt, you have 4 girls. Which one is your favorite? You know, the answer is, well, all of them. Yeah, but pick your favorite. And I'd say, okay, I'll go with Raya. She's my oldest. I love her. I mean, she's my firstborn. Her birth drastically changed my life. And she's the pace setter of our family, especially for our girls. I mean, this year she's a junior in high school. She's going to graduate in May. She attacks life. She's a hard worker. And she also talks a lot. She's my favorite. She's my favorite. But then I got to tell you about Lorelai. She's my second oldest, and I'm just telling you, this girl, she is so compassionate. She's got a huge heart for people. She's kind. She's also the most introverted. Loves old people. I mean, loves old people. If you're an old person in the room, she loves you. I mean, she says that what she wants to do in her life is grow up and hang out with old people. That's what she says. Dad, if I could just drive a bus of old people, that's what I want to do. Loves old people. Incredible heart. She's definitely my favorite, Or, okay, then there's Nora. She's my third child. And I'm just telling you, Nora, I see a lot of me in Nora. She's bold. She's very socially adept. She's very socially aware. She can almost talk around her sisters. They have no idea what's going on. She can troll them, and I just look at her like, come on, stop. Don't do that. She's so witty. She's got such great, quick responses. She loves music. And here's the deal. I think one day Nora could be a pastor. She's definitely my favorite. But let me tell you about Cadence. Cadence is the baby of the family, We went for 4 kids because I was hoping for a son. But I'm glad I got Cadence. I really am glad. What a joy. I mean, she is so sweet. She's so sweet. She's smart. She's cuddly. She's always near you. She's funny. She loves a good dad joke, which makes me happy. And this girl loves bunnies. She loves bunnies. She's my favorite. See, the reason why I have more than one favorite is because all these kids are my kids. My favorite doesn't just rest on one of them. It rests on all of them. And if you say, yeah, but pick one, I'd say, okay, all of them. I'd pick Raya and Lorelai and Nora and Cadence. And I would pick them all at the same time, and maybe even for different reasons. But the biggest filter is simply because they are my kid. I love them. And if you're a parent, you get it. You love your kids in the same way. Now, why is that? Why is there something inside of me as a dad that just naturally loves my girls? And here's the thing. I always say this to my girls. Girls, you can literally do anything in this life, and I hope you make more wise choices than not, but my love for you will never stop. Where does that come from? There's this idea of grace that Jesus talks about. Grace is this unmerited favor toward man. It's God just simply leaning in your life and my life, and he goes, look, I'm going to love you way before you love me. It's hard to imagine. And in church, we talk about God's love all the time. But when I became a father, I began to understand this idea of grace way more. Because, for example, I always think about this story. If you're part of our church, you've heard this story before. But Nora, who's our third child, when she was growing up, she was the most lively. We would lose her all the time. I mean, you go in the store, you can't keep tabs on her. She always wanted to test the boundaries of everything. And I remember this one time I came home from work, and I checked in with my wife, Vanessa, and I said, hey, how were the girls today? And she just said, Nora. I said, what happened? She walked me through the day, and Nora just did not behave, did not listen. And so that night I was tucking in, our girls, and we would do this when they were little. We'd tuck them in, and we'd read the Bible story, and we would pray with them. And I had a wound from my dad when I was growing up, because when I was growing up, my dad, he never verbally told me he loved me. And so I made a decision as a dad that I was always going to tell my girls I love them. In fact, I just said every night I'm going to tell them I love them. And so that night I'm tucking in Nora, and I get to the point where, I'm telling her, and I say, Nora, I just want you to know I love you. And then for some reason this night I also said, and I'm proud of you. I love you and I'm proud of you. And I'll never forget it. It has stayed with me for years. She looked right at me and she said, why? Because here's what she's thinking. She's going, I know I didn't behave today. I didn't listen to Mom once. I mean, I spent more time in my room than anywhere else in this house. And now Dad's home, right? And he's tucking me in, and he's saying he loves me. Why? And in that moment, it just really stood out to me. I go, oh man, what a great parenting moment. Because my kid's about to learn something about me and also about God. And so I leaned in with Nora, and I said, Nora, I know why you're asking, but here's what you need to know. I don't love you or not, I don't not love you or love you because you listened to your mom or behaved today, although I hope you do, okay? Help a brother out and listen to her. I love you because you're my kid. And if I could pick, Nora, here's what I want you to know. If I could pick any other kid in this world, even after the day that you just had, I'd still pick you. That's grace. You can't earn my love. And today you may not have even deserved it, but I offer it to you. And when it comes to grace, all you need to do is receive it or find it and take it. And this is kind of the relationship that God has kind of put in place for us and with him. You see this in the book of Ephesians. This is Paul who wrote this idea of grace. In Ephesians chapter 2, verse 8 says this, for it is by grace. See, it's a gift that you've been given. It is for it is by grace you have been saved through faith, believing in God. And this is not from yourselves. It is the gift of God, not by works, so that no one can boast. You know how you get on God's favorite list? You find his grace. You receive his love. And you believe he is who he says he is. And yet in this moment, it brings so much tension. Because a lot of times we keep determining favor by the circumstances of our life. This is why I think the Christmas story, especially with Mary, is such a big deal. When I meet with people, I mean Christians and non-Christians, these two kind of things I'm about to talk about always seem to rise to the top. Doesn't matter if you have faith or not, these are tensions of life that we are trying to resolve, and yet you see these same tensions in the Christmas story in the life of Mary. For example, first question. Statement really. Faith doesn't mean we don't have questions. See, I think a lot of people think, well, if I'm on God's favorite list, then all this should make sense. And yet I'm just telling you, I've been a follower of Jesus for many, many years, and I still have questions. There's still things that don't add up for me. Mary, she was on God's favorite list, had questions. Didn't all make sense to her either. Luke chapter 1, verse 31. Here's the plan. Mary, you will conceive and give birth to a son, and you are to call him Jesus, and he will be great and be called the Son of the Most High. And the Lord God will give him the throne of his father David, and he will reign over Jacob's descendants forever. His kingdom will never end. Mary, there's a baby that's coming. It's going to change the world, and you're going to deliver him. And here comes the question, verse 34. Mary says, hang on a sec. How will this be? I believe in God, but I don't understand how this is all going to work out because I am a virgin. And Mary may be a nobody from nowhere, but she knows how babies are made, and so do you. And she's going, this doesn't add up. And the angel answered, well, the Holy Spirit will come on you, and the power of the Most High will overshadow you, and so the Holy One to be born will be called the Son of God. Even Elizabeth, your relative, she's going to have a child in her old age, and she who was said to be unable to conceive in her 6th month. For no word from God will ever fail. Mary's on the favorite list because she's a child of God and she believes in God, but she still had questions. Meaning that you can believe in God and still have questions too. But she eventually gets to this point, verse 38, where she says this, look, I don't understand it all, but I'm the Lord's servant. If I got to choose to roll with God or not roll with God, I'm going with God. So here's the deal, God, may your word to me be fulfilled. I don't get it all, but I'll believe it and I'll go with you. Listen, Mary was a favorite, and yet she still had questions. Meaning you can have questions about life, and you can still be on God's favorite list. Here's the second thing that I run into. Faith. Faith doesn't mean that we're going to have a perfect life. Mary was on God's favorite list, and yet her life was not easy. Think about this just for a second. Mary became a social outcast as soon as she became pregnant with the Son of God. No one believed her story, and if you were there, you wouldn't believe it too. Did you hear Mary's pregnant? Wow, isn't she engaged to be married to Joseph? Yeah, is he the father? No. Who is? God. Right. Nobody believed her. Even Joseph didn't believe her, her soon-to-be husband. In fact, Joseph only stays with her because an angel has a conversation with him too. Then think about this. When Mary's 9 months pregnant with the Son of God, she has to travel 80 miles on a donkey to Bethlehem. You think Mary had some questions, says she's on a donkey 9 months pregnant for 10 days? God, is there an easier way to do this? They got to go to Bethlehem. They got to register in. They got to pay some taxes. Then she's going to give birth to the Son of God being surrounded by animals. Then after the birth, her and Joseph, they're going to flee to Egypt because Herod, the guy's in charge, is threatened by the word of this new king who's being born, and he's killing babies. So they hike it out of there and go to Egypt. And then somewhere in Jesus' late teens or early 20s, Joseph, Mary's husband, he dies. And she all of a sudden becomes a single mom, raising the Son of God. Not an easy task. And then Jesus grows up, and he's Jesus. So he starts doing Jesus stuff. He starts preaching to people. He starts healing people, starts casting out demons. It kind of freaks out Mary because Mary was hoping that maybe Jesus could just follow in the steps of his earthly father who's a carpenter and just be normal Jesus. Jesus couldn't do it. There's a story of Mary going to find Joseph one day and just go, would you just come home? Be normal, And Jesus is like, no, I can't. This is why I've been put on this earth. And then, think about this. And then, this baby who was born on that first Christmas, 33 years later, Mary will be at the foot of his cross. When Jesus is being crucified, he's literally being nailed to a Roman cross. Mary will be there at the foot of it. And she will see her son die. Mary was on the favorite list, but she didn't live an easy life. She lived a meaningful life, but it definitely wasn't an easy life. And yet she was still highly favored. In fact, in the middle of all this story, that first Christmas, there's a verse in Luke chapter 2. We got shepherds on the move now. We got wise men doing stuff, all this kind of stuff. Then there's this verse right in the middle of it, verse 19 says this, but Mary treasured up all these things and pondered them in her heart. She believed it. She was highly favored. She was on the right list, and yet her life would not be easy, but it would be meaningful, hence why we're talking about it 2,000 years later. Now, if Mary was here, wouldn't that be cool if I was like, Mary, come on out, and she just came out? If I was to interview Mary, because I was thinking about this, just because, we're talking about God's favorites, and she was one of them, was thinking of all the questions I could ask. What question would I ask if I could interview her? That's what I wrote down on my notes just a couple of days ago. I'd say something like this: Mary, what was more difficult to believe? Right? You would have a baby whose father is God, or that this baby would one day need to die for the sins of the world? What's harder to believe? Mary had a tough life. It didn't always go her way. But Christmas changed the game. Here's why: because Christmas is the origin story of God, of Jesus. In fact, just about everything that you and I know about God, we know because of Jesus. We look at his life. Jesus said, if you want to know the Father, look at me. If you want to get to the Father, you got to go through me. Through Mary's obedience, we know a lot about God, because Jesus walked and lived and talked, and he came down in the form that we would recognize him. And because of that, a lot of us have chosen to follow him. And so the question is, are you one of God's favorites? Mary, if Mary was here, we'd say, Mary, you were one of God's favorites. What'd you do? And she'd go, I don't know. I just believed in God. And God called me his daughter. And I led a meaningful life, but not an easy life. And it was also a life filled with questions, but I still believed. I had a choice to go with God or without him. And I just decided to go with. My faith is always encouraged when I run into people. My mic pack just fell off, guys. I get encouraged when I hang out with people whose life isn't easy and who have a lot of questions, and yet they still choose to follow God, because I think that faith is faith that's on full display. When it's easy to tap out, but you stay. My buddy who I was telling you about, who a year ago, whose wife passed away this day. I remember being in this service, having very big questions for God. I remember it being very difficult to encourage my friend. Because if I'm honest, I was pretty upset and angry too. Not just I lost my friend, not just that my friend lost his wife, but on Christmas Eve. And so this morning when I got up, I texted him. I said, buddy, I hope you know I love you. I'm in your corner. Can't imagine what today's going to be like. And he responded back and said, dude, I love you too. And then he said something I was not expecting. He said, hey, could you do me a favor? I said, I'm in. What do you need? And I'm thinking, go pick something up for him or swing by his house and say hey to him. Here's what he said. He said, hey, when you get up there and you teach at Christmas Eve this year, make sure, just think about this. This guy, he's widowed, he's by himself, he's got 3 kids, and his wife died last year on Christmas Eve. Here's what he says. When you get up there, make sure you make it all about Jesus. Whew. And you can't tell me that guy doesn't have questions for God. And of all the plans that he could choose for his life, it didn't involve this. And yet, he believes. He believes. He has faith in Jesus, and because of that, he's a son of God. And he's on the favorite list. Are you? If you believe in Jesus, if you believe that he was born and lived 33 years and died for your sin and for mine, and 3 days later beat death and came back from the grave, Jesus says, if you have faith in him, if you believe he's the source of your salvation, then you are one of God's kids. You are highly, highly favored. So let's do this. Let's stand up. I know we got some pyros in the room that want to light some candles. So let's stand up. Get your candle out. I'm going to pray for us, and then here's a cool thing about when we light candles. Isn't there just something about those 3 to 5 minutes that your candle is lit, you're singing a song. There's just, your world could be crumbling tonight, and yet there's just something so peaceful about that moment. And I just want you to know, I just believe this. Because I think I've experienced this, and you just got to know this too, that the Christmas story, when Jesus showed up, there was really nothing peaceful about what was happening on this planet. Yet his life would change the game forever. Change my life, change a lot of your lives in the room. I just want you to know that if you're looking for something more and you're not a follower of Jesus, that whatever moment we're about to have together for the next 3 to 5 minutes, you could actually get access to that for the rest of your life. And then one day, spend eternity with God forever in heaven for those who believe and have faith. Let me pray for us. Father, we thank you for the night. We thank you for the opportunity to remember the Christmas story one more time. And God, I pray that you would refresh our hearts and our minds. This unbelievable story that many of us believe to be true, I pray that you would wow us again. It's a magnificent story. And it's one I hope that we never, ever forget as a church. We're here because of a baby who was born 2,000 years ago, who changed the world forever. I pray that we would do our best to follow you in the rest of the days that we have on this planet. And we pray all this in the name of your Son. Amen.
Silent night, holy night, all is calm, all is bright, round yon virgin mother and child. Holy infant, so tender and mild, sleep in heavenly peace, sleep in heavenly peace. Silent night, holy night, Son of God, love's pure light, radiant beams from thy holy face. With the dawn of redeeming grace, Jesus, Lord, at thy birth, Jesus, Lord, at thy birth.